activated microglia, and it keeps like spiraling out this whole inflammatory process in the brain. So there's also this dominant negative effect that's going on. That's interesting, and you want to understand that as well. But yes, Alzheimer's disease is one of the neurodegenerative diseases that are up in the top 4 or 5, like you mentioned, causes
Well, it's
death.
the top. It's the only neurodegenerative disease that's on the top 10 list of death.
Top 10, yeah.
Yep.
So cardiovascular disease.
So cardiovascular is far and away number 1. It's not even, I mean, cancer as in an aggregate is number 2, but as an oncologist, I sort of take an issue with that because cancer is a completely heterogeneous form of diseases. So, to put this in perspective, right? So breast cancer, who's not afraid of breast cancer if you're a woman? Breast cancer accounts for 3% of deaths in women. I was shocked to learn that. Very low. I would have thought much, much higher. Now, cancer in women, all cancers, 20, 21%. Cardiac disease, 22, 23%. So if you're a woman, if you ask anyone on the street, are you more afraid of heart disease or breast cancer? I think most women would understandably say breast cancer. And yet it's dwarfed by cardiac disease by a factor of 7.5 to 1.
And we definitely know that diet and lifestyle play a major role in your, risk for cardiovascular disease.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no place where that's more obvious than actually in Alzheimer's disease, for other reasons, which is
really? Alzheimer's?
Yeah, I think so.
More than cardiovascular?
Well, I mean, I say that just based on what I call the existence principle, right? So cardiac disease, I mean, I think that's entirely true. I think cardiac disease is inevitable, right? And while we've had a deterioration in our lifestyle over the past 40 years, pretty precipitated and accelerated sort of move in the wrong direction on that, it's been largely offset by pretty amazing medical advances. So there's the 3 things that have, I think, allowed cardiac disease to remain. In fact, it's actually come down. If you look at the death rate from cardiac disease, it's come down. So it's still the number 1 killer, but it's actually on a downward slope. I mean, it's sort of plateauing. But when you look at what sort of the 3 biggest drivers are of cardiac disease, the first one is not disputed. It's smoking. So the data are really clear that if you could only make one behavioral change to reduce your risk of heart disease, it's don't smoke.
Yeah.
The next 2 are actually, because they are so cross-correlated, you can't actually distinguish which one's more important, are hypertension and elevated ApoB, or LDL particle number. And again, ApoB is the single best biomarker, or LDLP, to distinguish your risk of cardiac disease. It trumps LDL cholesterol, it trumps non-HDL cholesterol, it trumps triglycerides, HDL cholesterol. Those things don't hold a candle to LDL particle number, ApoB. Well, think about it. Think about the advances we've made in the last 40 years on all of those, right? So smoking has gone from, 45% of the population to 18% of the population. So we reduced smoking.
In the U.S.
In the U.S., that's right. Obviously, we haven't done the same across in the developing world. Think of the litany of drugs we have for controlling hypertension, and think about the litany of drugs we have to bring down ApoB. So despite enormous improvements in the 3 big picture drivers, it's still the number 1 killer. So it's got to be lifestyle driven, but we're blunting the effect of that. Whereas in Alzheimer's disease, we don't really have any pharmacotherapy plays. Like, we're still arguing about what the environmental trigger is. Is it all diet driven? Is it sleep driven? Is it stress driven? What's the combination of factors?
Yeah.
Is it a virus? Or is it prions? I mean, I've heard every argument under the sun, right? But here's what we do know. We know that in the last 50 years, the prevalence of Alzheimer's disease has gone up about 2.5%. Whereas the increase in our per year, by the way, I'm sorry, that's per year. Whereas we know that our longevity has increased at about 0.6% per year over that same period of time. Now, over a 50-year period, a 2% spread per year of prevalence, actually, I think it might be incidence now that I think about it. I think it's incidence, and longevity suggests that Alzheimer's disease isn't just the natural response of getting old. There's something driving it. And even if you accept that part of that increase in incidence is a greater appreciation for the diagnosis, it's hard to argue that makes up the full 2% spread.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think that to me, that's the most convincing case for why there is something in our environment that's triggering Alzheimer's disease, and it is not just the natural consequence of aging.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts as to what are triggering Alzheimer's disease in terms of our
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a combination of things, but the most compelling evidence to me, and again, this is probably because I'm just a simpleton and I like to start with Occam's razor, is it's very hard to dispute the high association between Alzheimer's disease and type 2 diabetes and hyperinsulinemia. And so I'm in the camp of which some neurobiologists are, but not all. This is still far from being, settled. I sort of view Alzheimer's disease as brain diabetes. And I think of the ApoE genotype as basically just a susceptibility. So I think anybody can get Alzheimer's disease with any genotype if there is enough insulin resistance, if there's basically enough difficulty in getting glucose through pyruvate dehydrogenase and into the Krebs cycle. So I think it's a neuronal energy problem more than, and I think all of the other things we see are results of that. But I think in terms of what the driver is, I think it's a neuronal energy problem. And I think all of the tau plaque, the neuronal, the synapse stuff, I think those are byproducts. And I think in animal models, there's some very convincing data that you can, you've seen this stuff, I'm sure, more than I have, right? Simultaneous insulin, injection of glucose and insulin can transiently overcome deficit. Administration of exogenous BHB can overcome the deficit by bypassing and going straight through alpha hydroxybutyrate into the Krebs cycle. So, where you can reverse the signs and symptoms. Now, I'm not particularly in this space, though I find it really interesting. There's a guy by the name of Richard Isaacson. I don't know. Do you know Richard? He's a neurologist at Cornell, and he has a practice that focuses on early cognitive decline, that utilizes very low glycemic index diets coupled with MCT and stuff. So it's basically like inducing ketosis without a full-on ketogenic diet, which obviously for many people is challenging. Yeah. And he's seeing very promising results. And I think he's running a couple of clinical trials as well. And there's a whole sort of, I don't know what the word to describe it is, but there's a whole network of people out there with, all of their interesting data that are, because we don't have controls, we just don't know if this is like a performance bias we're seeing, or if there's a true impact. But anyway, that's sort of my hypothesis, which is I don't actually know what's causing Alzheimer's disease. I don't know how to treat it. I don't know if it's treatable once it's in a late enough stage. But I firmly believe that if you can be as insulin sensitive as possible, for you as an individual, you reduce your risk. Now, that doesn't mean that the risk ever goes to zero for any of us, regardless of ApoE genotype. But I know that if I have to choose between being very insulin sensitive and not so insulin sensitive, I'm going to be better off in this camp. And I think that's frankly true for every disease state.